Alright, hello folks, how's it going? A short video today because you are getting a live stream tonight. That is something that I've cleared my schedule for, so I will be on a little bit later on doing a live stream. We will be playing some Warhammer 3, and I'll be playing as Belagar Ironhammer in one of the toughest campaigns in that game, so that should be fun. I hope you've all had a really good week. I certainly have. It's been okay. I've gone to the cinema quite a few times this week with the missus. We saw Predator on Monday, the new one, Badlands. Very good movie, by the way. I highly, highly, highly recommend it. Then we saw, I think, on Wednesday, Running Man, the new movie. Pretty good. Pretty good. Give it a solid 7 or 8 out of 10. And then last night we saw Dogma, which was out again in the cinema. Our local cinema does something really cool in that they keep bringing back old movies. We saw Back to the Future the other week in the cinema. Really cool. Last year we saw like Jurassic Park in the cinema again. All these are the really cool things that they do. So, shout out to the Light in New Brighton on the Wirral in England. It's awesome. Anyway, moving on. There's some hobby nightmares. The one today, because I've been saving this one. It is from Wronghammer. So thank you very much for sending this in, Wronghammer. And he says, "Hello North. Wronghammer here, with the continuing saga of the evil, and possibly gay, but definitely a bit of a dick, DM, Dungeon Master, named Neil." Alrighty. "I want to thank you for reading my story. Your on-camera reactions were priceless and had my wife and I cracking up. Good stuff. I just need to clarify one thing. It kind of sounded like you said Neil was my best friend when you were reading the beginning part of my story. I think the sentences got a bit jumbled up. Tim is my best friend, and Neil was one of the more friendly acquaintances." Okay. "It was funny you mentioned that perhaps Neil was gay. As far as I know of, he was straight. The last time I heard about him, he had a wife and kids, but then again, Elton John had a wife and kids too. Not saying Neil had even the slightest hint of Elton John about him. He was more of an Ozzy Osbourne crossed with Henry Rollins type. But he did have one very questionable scenario that Tim had told me about, the study hall group." Alright. "First off, he had injected his own evil demigod player character from a different campaign into the current campaign he was running. This NPC, god character, who had slain the god Bane and taken his power, was a taskmaster and antagonist to the player characters. Upon meeting Neil's godlike character, the first level players were brought forth into his throne room where he summoned a giant erect dingus from out of the floor and told them to humiliate themselves, one at a time, in front of it." Okay, right. This is why in every RPG I write, I have to write a full sentence, a full paragraph on not being a creep. It really irritates me that I have to do this, but yeah. Tim said that one poor sod rubbed up all over it. Another guy licked it, and others bowed down and worshipped it. One brave soul even attacked it. At the conclusion of this humiliation ritual, Neil laughed at them and said, "Huh, you just had to touch it." You just had to touch it. As if that wasn't completely ridiculous enough. All that aside, I'm pretty sure Neil was more into making people cringe than he was actually being gay. Then again, one time we were playing Mech Warrior, a futuristic cyberpunk-like RPG, and he had us go into a gay bar, lure the target out of the bar and into an alley, where we knocked him out. We then had to perform a cavity search to retrieve the cubbyhole microchip that was needed to complete the mission. Sure does seem like I'm not making the best case for Neil not being gay and being straight as an arrow, but, moving on. Alright. Okay. I don't think this guy is gay, because, listen. 1 second, just gotta text my missus back. I'm not... I know a lot of gay dudes. I think like 4, maybe. I don't know. And none of them are weird. They're all nice guys, normal guys. All right. So it's nothing crazy, But I will say, this guy I don't think he's gay. I think he's just a bit weird and a bit closeted and a bit odd. Because even back in the day, some of this behaviour is very strange and would have gotten you kicked out of a lot of groups. You know what I mean? Anyway. I will have attached some more pics of my painted minis. The last 2 pics may be considered too racy, and if you don't show them, I completely understand. Her name is Naughty Gust, a proxy I made for Rotty Gus. I'm so proud of the fly farting gal. Okay. She's not too bad, so I will show her off. Here she is. There you go. Yeah, it's not too bad. You can't see anything. It's fine. Really nicely painted, though. Like, well done, man. Nicely painted. Nice stuff. And a few of the other models are here as well. We got Trench Dude, maybe for Trench Crusade. And of course, a Nurgle tank there. Alright. If you wouldn't mind throwing them up when you get a chance, or if you need a break from the story like last time, alright? There are a lot of spoilers after this, so just carry on reading if you want to. I will do, and I will take a strong sip of tea before I carry on. Right. Now, on to the second adventure of Kaz Despaz. Right, if you don't remember who that is, I think it's Ron Hammer's character that he made for playing D&D with our friend here. What is our friend's name? It's Neil, isn't it? Yeah, Neil. Alright. This one features the addition of my younger brother Kirk and his friend Gappy. A real nickname I gave him due to the unfortunate spacing of his 2 front teeth. This is the most British thing I've ever heard in my life. Like, British people don't, like, put it this way. There's a comedian called Ross Noble, right? And he's speaking about one of his friends who had one of his testicles removed due to, you know, having testicular cancer in it. And he got a prosthetic ball put back in. But this ball was like a stress ball. It had a similar texture. So sometimes he would just play with it, right? You know. And then eventually they're in like a pool and he's just like sitting off just playing with it. And one of his mates says, "Oi man, Dave, will you leave Randall and Hopkirk alone?" Right? And they just started absolutely corpsing laughing, right? If you don't know who Randall and Hopkirk are, do a Google search. Essentially, it is a deceased a deceased spirit, obviously, and a normal human detective, and it's them, Randall and Hopkirk, going around solving crimes. Obviously, you know, that's, you know, it's just a very British thing. Sometimes we say things that are just beyond the pale funny, and sometimes we look at somebody's gaps in their teeth and go, Gappy, and that's their name. That's just how it is. Anyway, a real nickname I gave him due to the unfortunate spacing of his 2 front teeth, and also because we were all kind of a-holes to each other. For those of us who grew up back then, in a small town in Idaho, alright, you're in Idaho, okay, it's basically England, this slightly meant that, but mostly good-natured razzing was a way of life. The 3 of us went to Neil's house. I can't remember exactly why my brother and Gappy went. They were probably just bored and had nothing else to do. You see, they were the popular jocks of their class, and had never expressed an interest in fantasy role-playing or the like. I think Neil may have convinced them to come along when he arrived at our house to pick me up. The more players to roast, the better. Anyway, we are back at Neil's house. He had me level up Kaz from 1st to 2nd level, while my brother and Gappy drew up 1st level characters. After an hour or 2, we were ready to play. Kirk chose to play a human, dual class, wizard and thief, and Gappy decided to play a human fighter. We started out in a bar. Gappy and Kirk were friends, but I was a stranger to them. A random thug and his 2 thug buddies started picking on the skinny guy in robes, Kirk's character, which led to the obligatory bar brawl. As chaos erupted throughout the bar, Gappy and I teamed up to crack heads, while the wizard hid in the shadows and picked the pockets of the unconscious people laying on the floor. Oh, let me not forget to mention that my brother, armed with his dagger, unceremoniously dispatched the now unconscious thug who had started the fight. He didn't do this to act rashly, of course. He attempted a sleight of hand skill check to conceal his 2nd-degree murder. It must not have succeeded because the barmaid screamed and ran out of the door calling for the city guard. We quickly fled together as the incoming guard's alarm whistle grew louder. After that, we were ready to venture forth into the great unknown, but first my brother needed a spell book. I remember the wizard spell book being a big deal in that version of D&D, and my brother's starting funds were insufficient to just acquire one. But now that he had snagged some coin purses from distracted bar patrons, he might have had enough for the purchase. So we headed to the nearest wizard's residence to make the transaction. After being led into the waiting room by his servant, who then exited to get his master, we were left to our own devices for a bit. Neil described the small room, pointing out the shelves stacked with spell books and scrolls that would be of particular interest to Kirk. My brother, in his infinite wisdom, decided to try and steal the smallest spell book after Neil informed us that we appeared to be completely alone, and apparently unobserved, in the closed room. The real-world irony was that my brother had become somewhat of a skilled shoplifter at the time, so of course, with these things in mind, and the overconfidence of a 15-year-old, he slipped the book into his robes. Neil double-checked to make sure Gappy and I didn't want to get in on the free book sale action before smiling and saying, from under the door that the servant had exited, a mist starts to fill the room. Make surprise rolls. We rolled and failed. The mist forms into a robed man with a staff. He points at Kirk and says, "Die!" Kirk, make a saving throw versus death magic. We are sitting there slightly stunned as Neil points out the D20 to Kirk. Kirk rolls. Neil's smile widens. You fall to the floor dead. Okay. The robed man walks over to Kirk's corpse and retrieves a stolen book and returns it to the shelf. Then nonchalantly asks, is there anything I can help you two with before I leave you with your dead friend? Me. What, really? Kirk's character is seriously dead, dude? Neil. Yes. Me. Okay, well that's a bit crap. Oh my god. I tell the wizard we came to purchase a spellbook for Kirk. Neil laughs. He laughs and says, oh, then I guess your business is done here. Be gone. To be fair, there are some wizards who would do this, you know. Me. Wait, is there any way we can bring him back, like reverse the spell or something? Neil. I could reincarnate him. The wizard looks us up and down, but I doubt you could afford it. Me. We gather all our money and gems and ask the wizard if that's enough. Neil. He snorts and says, no. Do you have anything else? We place all of our items out for the wizard to see. Neil. He looks over your items, and you see his eyes widen slightly as he focuses on the holy symbol you acquired from the priestesses. He casts a spell, and it glows brightly, seeming to confirm his suspicions. How much do you want for this? Me. I don't know. Neil. I'll give you 2,000 gold pieces. Me. Is that a lot? Neil. Are you asking me or the wizard? Let me interject here. To give an evil DM fun fact about Neil, he had his Simon Says rule he would implement at his own convenience. If we weren't clearly stating that my character says or does this action as opposed to I say or do this just as a joke, but not for real because it would get my character killed, he would sometimes opt to make your character do the thing for real that we said was just a joke. And I remember him telling me this applied even more to my character because of my chaotic neutral alignment. He said it was one of the drawbacks of being that alignment. I had to do the occasional crazy thing or reckless thing, or I wasn't role-playing it correctly. Yeah, this is my main thing with alignments that I don't like, is some DMs will use them like this. They'll say, oh, yeah, well, technically you're not role-playing your alignment properly, so, you know, you have to be punished now, or you have to be another alignment. It's like, dude, just get rid of the alignment thing. It just, I've never liked it. Never ever liked it. Because basically it just negates all human expression, you know. Dude, Hitler liked dogs. Do you know what I mean? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, Hitler liked dogs. And he was kind and nice to dogs. He was a massive piece of shit who did really horrible things and was kind of an evil person, but he did like his dogs. You know what I mean? Like there people have weird nuances to them. I'm sure, like, Satan likes to go bowling once in a while. You know, there are, like, human things that people like to do. Even an evil human is still a human and they will have one redeeming quality. Like one. You know what I mean? Maybe two. You know what I'm saying? And saying, I detect evil, and then, oh, that person over there is evil. Like, what? It narrows everything down to just binary choices and binary things. Now, don't get me wrong, I do like binary things, in that I like to, as I've gotten older, the settings that I like have very strong good and evil in them. You know, the monsters are bad and humans are good. You know, that kind of stuff. I've really started to sidestep grey morality in RPGs and in settings, because I just think it's a coward's way out. You've got nothing to say. If you need to cloak everything in cynicism and almost like an arrogant, millennial, look down my nose attitude at your own setting, you have nothing to say, in my opinion. You're a bit of a coward. You can have a morally grey world that still says very cool things. That's what I try and create whenever I create my own stuff. You know, I try and create a world that is morally complex, true, but there are good and evil in the world, you know, and the grim darkness of the world is there so that your heroic actions really do stand out. You know, that's you know, when you choose to be good, when the world's telling you to be bad and you choose to be good, that's cool. I like that. You know what I mean? That's when grim dark is good. Unless you do it in Vampire the Masquerade, then it's a bit silly, because there are certain games out there where you're literally playing a monster, and you're breaking the game by not playing the monster. So, you know, you can be a regretful monster, a monster who doesn't want to hurt people, but you're still a monster. Like, imagine being a shark who feels empathy for fish. That's what you are as a vampire if you're a good person. But you still have to feed. You still have to kill. Right? You need to roleplay that. You know? That's why I didn't like Erika Ishii's take on it when they did Vampire the Masquerade on World of Darkness on their own channel. She was awful, because she was an anarch who just refused to be a vampire. She was a vampire, never really fed, never really killed anybody, and was just she was allowed to get away with it. Then why the hell should anybody else at that table bother role-playing a vampire then? If you're letting her just have this really strange anarch, you know, leftist, let's all pick daisies approach to being a vampire. If you're letting her do that, the entire thing breaks down, right? Yeah, it just wasn't my kind of thing at all. So, complicated worlds are good, but you need to handle them with care, is my opinion on these things. Moving on, anyway. Okay. And if you changed your alignment, all the experience points you had earned towards the next level would be lost. In other words, he'd reset your experience points to the base amount for that level. Now back to the in-progress nightmare where I informed Neil I was speaking to him and not the wizard. I asked, is that a lot of gold pieces? Neil said, I'd say yes. You can purchase a +1 magic sword for a little over 1,000 gold pieces. That's usually an item you can't afford till you're like 3rd level and you're only 2nd level. Me. Okay, I sell it. Neil, the wizard says, I'm going to stop saying the names now and just do the voices, and that's alright. Alright. Neil, the wizard says, deal. He picks up the holy symbol, makes a motion with his staff, and it disappears. He then walks around the countertop, pulls out a leather bag, and counts out 2,000 gold pieces. Wait, I didn't mean Kaz said that he Sorry, let me just do that again. Wait, I didn't mean Kaz said that to the wizard. What I meant was, I'm willing to sell it to him, but I want to make sure that's enough money to reincarnate him. You know? Too late. You didn't specify that you were talking out of character, and the deal is done. Dude, I just fucking walk away at this point. You're a dickhead. You're a dickhead. Like... Do we have enough money to get Kirk reincarnated now? Or are you asking me or the wizard? Does it matter? Neil smiles. I asked the wizard if we have enough to get Kirk reincarnated now. No. It would cost you easily twice as much as that, and that's not including the spell components that would also be required. Is there any other way to bring him back? You can take him to the priest and see if they will resurrect him for a major discount. If only you had known the true value of that holy symbol. They would have resurrected him and given you a change to spare for it. The wizard laughs at you. Now take your money and leave. No, I said, give back the holy symbol. We had a deal, now leave unless you want to join your friend. At this point, I'd really had it with this dickhead. Yeah, mate, take the book and wrap it round his head. Also, Kirk had started telling us to attack the wizard right after his character's demise, to which Neil informed him, you can't talk to them, you're dead. Take a break, read the player's handbook, or go and play the saga. Neil was a real stickler about players talking out of character to each other about what their characters should do, or would do, when they were among NPCs. He considered it cheating when they were dead. So much so, that he had added his own sign language option that he would use for one of our learned languages. Kaz was too dumb to know anything but common, but I already knew Gappy was ready to attack, so there was no need for me to try and violate this rule. So it came down to two choices. Leave, cheated and defeated by high-level douchebaggery, or fight, almost a 100% chance of ending up a corpse, but a corpse with dignity. Or maybe there was a third option. Hold on, I said. He wasn't really my friend. We just met a couple of hours ago at a bar. We just decided to join up and start adventuring together about 5 minutes ago. Neil raises an eyebrow and rolls a dice. He believes you and asks you, so what? Well, I was wondering if you had any jobs that we can do, maybe to pay for it. Neil grins. Come to think of it, I am out of several rare spell components. I could pay you to fetch these. Me. Right, hold on. Do you have any magic swords I could use that I can use to help us successfully complete these jobs for you? Yes, but I'm not just going to give one to you. Of course not. I'll buy it with these. Kaz gestured to the gold pieces. Okay. The wizard rings a bell, and his servant enters the room. He tells the servant what he wants, and the servant exits, returning a short while later with a rolled up blanket that is unfurled to reveal several sword options. Neil tells me I can't afford much more than a +1 sword, and tells me about the look and type that are available. Kaz is interested in the Great Sword and Bastard Sword. He picks up the Great Sword. Hold on, the wizard stops you. You're not going to let me test them out before I make my purchase? Neil rolls a dice. He says fine, go ahead, but keeps one hand in his robes. Kaz tests the Great Sword. Neil describes its feel. Kaz carefully replaces it and tests the Bastard Sword next, and Neil describes it. Kaz says, I'll take this one, as he continues practice swinging the Bastard Sword. Deal. The wizard removes the hand from his robes and starts collecting the gold pieces. Me. Kaz says, die, and attacks him with his new sword. I bet, right, this is really cool. I bet this dickhead of a DM takes all the fun out of it and somehow finds a way to win the game, quote unquote. Let's see. Neil smiles like a proud parent and rolls a dice. Nice try, but he's not surprised. Roll initiative. How'd you just say? Oh, never mind. Kaz wins initiative. Neil's smile drops a degree. Gappy, I attack too. Neil, roll to see if you're surprised. Gappy rolls and is surprised, so he doesn't get an action during the surprise round. Kaz swings his new magic sword and nails the wizard, disrupting his coming spell. Round 2. Gappy rolls and beats the wizard with his initiative as well. Neil's smile again degrades to a bit of a grin. In this edition of D&D, wizards were easily the most powerful class at higher levels, but the weakest in close combat, and extra vulnerable in confined spaces. They needed distance to get the most out of most of their spells off, and the higher the spell, the harder the concentration check, and the longer the casting time. Add to that the difficulty of eating magic sword blows, backed by a bit of strength damage, and your wand-waving days would be over. I don't remember the details of every round, so here are the highlights. Gappy managed to get a hit in or two on the wizard, and I managed to get a lot more than a hit or two on the wizard. The wizard managed to get one spell off. It was an area of effect spell which downed Gappy and injured Kaz. At this point, I asked if the wizard is close to death, and Neil informs me, to my untrained eye, he looks really bad, probably about to drop. But I have no healer skills to know for sure. After having burnt through the wizard's highest level spells, Neil was now spending time between rounds, flipping through the book, looking for just the right spell to end the fight. I love how he gets all this time to do what he wants to do. You know what I mean? Just on this round, Neil spots a spell and grins. The wizard looks haggard, bleeding badly from several wounds. He looks near death. A wicked smile creases his bloody lips as he begins casting a spell. The hairs on the back of your neck stand up as a palpable energy builds around the room. Me. Okay, Kaz swings at the asshole again. I hit the wizard, but somehow manage not to kill him, despite the near-death descriptors Neil had given, and the wizard manages to make his concentration check behind the DM's screen, of course. Yeah, he's cheating. He's cheating. Neil beams, of course he does. The spell goes off. A small bead of fiery light launches from his fingertip and connects with Kaz. Upon impact, the bead erupts into a huge fireball that blasts everything in the room, including the wizard. The wizard's tower explodes, destroying nearby houses and catching the surrounding city block on fire, killing not only you and the wizard, but hundreds of innocent parties. Me. So he suicide bombed us rather than just lose? Pretty much, yeah. I don't even get a saving throw. Well, even if you had made them save the minimum amount of damage on this level, a fireball would kill you anyway. But man, what a way to go out big. And you almost killed him. You only had one hit point left. Oh, of course he did. You know what I mean? Like, only one hit point left. Of course. Of course. What a load of shit. North, you can imagine how thrilled we were that we almost won, but instead got to go out with a bit of a bang. Actually, I think my brother was happy that we could now just leave, and that he never had to play this stupid game ever again. Though he did end up playing a few times in the future when I was DMing, and did have a good time. So concludes the short-lived adventures of Kaz Despaz. This may surprise you, but it turned out that Kaz's lifespan was pretty average for all of the characters we had with Neil. Upon introducing us to the aforementioned mech warrior, and while we were filling out our character sheet, Neil said, "This game wants me to kill you, by the way." We started laughing, as opposed to the hell hath no fury of version of DM that you run normally. I remember joking to two of my best friends, Tim and Doug, who sat alongside me at the table, "Shall we just kill our characters now or roll for hit points first?" Neil laughed too, bless his evil DM heart. We gamed with Neil for about a year before moving on, right around the time we figured out how to completely DM our own campaigns. We were never the best DMs, but we would always stop ourselves from being a full-on Neil. Never go full Neil. Alright, this is what you get. Alright, remember, these guys had nowhere else to go, and they played with Neil for what, a year? And then dropped him like a hot brick. Like the second they were able to, they dropped him. If you want people to play D&D with, remember, D&D is a far longer time sink than Wargaming is, because you've got a campaign to do. Unless it's a one-shot, right? You've got a campaign to do. So, you know, don't be this guy. I've got one more quick story before wrapping this up. Tim, my friend, and Neil had come over to my house for a game. We were all out in a driveway shooting the shit when my neighbour, Ivy, drove by and pulled into a driveway. Ivy was a good-looking girl in our class. We waved hello, and then Neil asked us what we thought of Ivy. I said, "Yeah, she's cool, we're friends." She'd come over and jump on my trampoline, and I'd go over and swim in her pool. An above-ground pool. I don't want anybody getting the wrong picture. My house was a double-wide trailer, after all. We would go to strike up a conversation across the fence line if we were both outside. She liked rock and alternative music, and we shared a similar outlook on life. Tim said the equivalent too, only it was their photography class that they shared throughout high school, and that had created their family and friendly bond. Do you think she's hot? Would you go out with her?" he asked Tim. Neil asked Tim. Tim confirmed that of course he would. North, it should have gone without asking. The girl may have been lacking in the curves department, but her face was a 9 out of 10. She had long, dark and perfectly tanned skin. She had long, dark hair and perfectly tanned skin. She would have easily went into modelling after high school if she'd have wanted to. Neil says, Hold on. You guys stay right here. Dude, it's always guys like this. It's always guys like this. If he does what I think he's going to do, I'd have disowned him. I'd have slapped him in his face and disowned him and just walked off. I think he's going to out you to her and try and, like, you know, he'll try and have plausible deniability. He'll try and set you up with her right in front of her. And then say, "What? I was only trying to help." You know, kind of a thing. Let's see. We watch Neil stroll over to Ivy's driveway. It takes him a minute due to the distancing of our yards and chain link fencing. We are both wondering what the hell he is doing as he engages her in conversation. The whole conversation only takes a minute or two, with Neil doing the majority of the talking. Towards the very end, they both turn towards us before parting ways. She finishes getting stuff out of her car and walks into her house as he walks back to us with a shit-eating grin on his face. "So, what was that all about?" I asked. He looks directly at Tim and says, "I told her you like her, like really like her." We were stunned. Tim said, "Are you serious?" "Yeah, you said you would date her and I thought she was hot, so I thought I'd do you a favour, since you're too shy to make the first step, obviously." "What the fuck, dude?" said Tim. "That's messed up," I said. Neil's evil smile didn't even falter. I said, "What did she say?" I knew it couldn't have been great, but I wanted this dickhead to spit it out already. Neil. She just shook her head and had a, "Oh no, not him too" look on her face. I don't know. "You arsehole," said Tim. "What?" said Neil, with a smirking shrug. Dude, I'd have twatted him in the fucking face, honestly. Like, don't do this shit to your friends. I don't care how old you are. Don't do this shit to your friends. You know, like, I remember once at working in Birkenhead, which is near to where I live, where I used to live when I was a kid, right? And there was a girl in my office called Neve, and I actually had the hots for Neve. I thought she was quite cute, right? One other lad there was like, we were just talking, and he was talking about, you know, who he found was hot in the office, and I was like, "Oh, yeah, I think Neve's quite cute," you know. But that was it. Didn't say anything else. He then went and told her, and she wasn't interested, right? You know, I don't know what the deal was. She just wasn't interested. Because, again, lads, not every woman on earth will be interested in you. Just get that through your heads now. You know what I mean? I've known some really good-looking dudes to be turned down in the past. you need to just get over your own ego. Anyway, yeah, and it's fair enough. You know, she wasn't interested. But the fact he came back in and told me, like, gloating in my face. You know what I mean? Like literally gloating. And this dude's a lot bigger than I am. And wanted to go into the police, right? So he's clearly thought, you know, nothing of it. Anyway, I nearly got sacked from this job because I pushed him into, like, you know, one of those big metal cabinets, like, threw him backwards. He wasn't expecting it. If he was, he would have kicked my ass. But I pushed him fully, bang, straight into it, and got him up against it, and just got in his face. I can't even remember what I said to him. It was something along the lines of, "You're a piece of shit for doing that. If you ever try to embarrass me like that again, I'll fucking break your legs." Right? Anyway, I got sent home, and it was never the same for me after that. I pretty much got low-level sacked. But basically it means, you know, I went in and people weren't really willing to talk to me anymore. But like, it was an office body job anyway. I went and got another one. It wasn't a big deal, but I just lost my shit because you just don't do that. Like, what the fuck were you doing? Like, I cannot stand dudes like this. Okay. It's just, it's small dick energy. You know, he didn't have the balls to do anything about his life, so he has to go and try and wreck yours. That kind of shit. I can't stand it, dude. I just can't. So yeah, I really hate shit like this. I just slapped this guy right in his face and said, "No, get the fuck off my property. I don't want you here. I don't want you anywhere near me." You know, especially after his other weirdness. Him saying this shit, nah, man. This is horrible. You don't do this to your friends. You just don't. Tim became physically agitated. He was pacing and cursing. I could only imagine the anxiety and anger he was going through, having this giant, moist, bone-filled turd dropped at his feet by this human Cheshire cat known as Neil. Needless to say, our game day was over and everybody went home. North, I don't remember something ever coming of this incident. I don't believe Tim and Ivy ever spoke of it, and if I ever asked Ivy about it, I think she just dismissed it as Neil just being Neil. Yeah, I bet she did. Yeah, again, this is recoverable. You just knock on her door and say, listen, you tell her the truth. You say, listen, Ivy, you know you're good looking, right? Neil asked me if I thought you were good looking. I said you were very pretty, and he took it upon himself to come over here and talk some shit to you because he's a dickhead. I'm really sorry he did that. And then you leave her at that. And do you know what she would do? She'd go, oh, that's no problem. Absolutely, you know, he was a right dick for doing that. But thanks for that, though. Like, it's cool. We're cool. We can be friends, right? That's all you do. I should have done that myself to Neve. I should have gone, look, you know, we were having boy talk. He said, you know, who do you think's hot in here? And I mentioned your name. And he took it upon himself to do that. I'm really sorry he did that. And he's a piece of shit for doing it. But, you know, can we still be mates? And 9 times out of 10, they'll go, yeah, no problem. They'll actually respect you a lot for doing it. I was a lot younger back then. I was like 18, 19. So I'd responded by, you know, shoving this guy into a fucking Halifax. But there you go. Quick side note about Ivy. We ended up moving to the same city for college and would actually hang out together. After some time had passed and she broke up with her boyfriend and I finally summoned up the courage to tell her that I wanted to be more than friends, I got the, well, I don't know, I don't want to ruin our friendship number talk. To which I told her I didn't really want to be just friends anymore, and she had my number if she felt like going on a date sometime. Dude, good for you. That's the way to do it. That's the way to do it. And if they say, what, you don't want to be my friend unless I go on a date with you? Say yes. Let's go, yeah. Yeah. That's pretty much it, yeah. You know, that's pretty much it, dude, yeah. Simple. You know, that's how you lay your cards out on the table. And if she accuses you of like saying, what, so just because I won't go out with you, we can't be friends? Say yes. Yeah. Yeah, because our dynamic has changed, hasn't it? I like you in a romantic way, and you don't like me in that way at all. So I'm not going to torture myself being around somebody that I want to be with who doesn't want to be with me. So yeah, I'm not going to sacrifice my happiness so that we can be friends. Yeah, that is true. You are right on that, yes. Most women out there will respect you and go, okay, all right. They'll never talk to you again, but man, they'll always remember that guy's got some balls, you know? Like, his self-respect's worth more than me, and that's fine, you know? Well done, man. That's just the way to do it. Absolutely. Absolutely. I was done with being the nice guy who struck up friendships with girls before attempting to date them. Yeah, don't do that. Never try and friendship your way into some pussy. Never works. Never ever works. It only works. That's a lie. It only works if the woman really likes you, and has always really liked you, right? But most of the time, if you've just met a girl, never try and friendship your way into it. Always lay your cards out on the table. Always be romantically open and involved. Always be like, okay, you know, romance is on the table because I like you. Don't try and be the nice guy. Don't try and be friends. You know, lay that out. You know, maybe not in the hobby. That's different because you're there to play. You're there to do something else. You know what I mean? But if you're in like a social situation, like you're with friends or whatever, or again, if you meet somebody in the hobby, you know, treat her normally, treat her like you're playing Warhammer and all that sort of thing, but definitely flirt. This is what I'm saying to you, right? I'm not saying whack your dick on the table whilst you're rolling for saves. Right? I'm not saying that, okay? I'm saying whilst you're playing a game of 40k with her, flirt, all right? Just try and maybe tease her a little bit, have a bit of a flirtation, you know, that kind of thing. Dude, flirting, you give it off without even trying most of the time, right? And if you're feeling that you're getting that back, then escalate it to say, okay, well, do you want to go for a drink or a coffee or something after the game? You know, that kind of a thing. But never try and just friendship your way. That's dishonest. If you want to be friends with a girl, great, no problem. But if you want to be friends with her with a view to like getting in her pants later on, don't do that. That's dishonest. That's creepy. Don't do that. Okay. Lay your cards out. Flirt. Just be a flirt with her. You know, if you don't know how to do that, do reps. Learn. You learn by doing. You know, go out and do it. You know, but do lay your cards out on the table. Don't be a creep. Don't be a creep. That's going to be one of the main challenges of having a pretty daughter, which I do, is like when lads start trying to be creeps around her, she will be educated, she will know. I'm like, yeah, listen, you know, if a guy's doing this, he probably has an ulterior motive, going to be honest with you, right? This is what it is. Guys will be guys, right? It is what it is. But try not to do it. You know, if and again, if you see a woman who's pretty and you just want to be friends with her, there's nothing wrong with that. Absolutely, be friends. You know, I've had that situation reversed on me in the past, where I've been just out of a relationship and not been interested at all. I've met somebody, either through a social circle or gaming or whatever, when we become good friends, and that they've said to me, listen, I want to be more than friends. And I've said, oh, okay, cool, you know, and I'm turned into a relationship, right? There's one girl that I met online back in the day, in the States, who that became a relationship. Not the one I was moving over there with, another one. And that started that way. We were friends online, just playing video games together. And she said, look, you know, I like you. I think I'm falling in love with you. I like you, you know. It's a bit more serious than that. We've been playing games for a while, and she said, look, she just came out and said, look, I think I'm falling in love with you. Like, I need to, and if you don't feel the same way, I can't do this anymore. And luckily for her, I did feel the same way. And we did date for a couple of years, right? So, but like, don't go into a situation with that ulterior motive already in your mind. Try and be pure in your intentions. Try and be like, I just want to be friends. And if something comes of that, then great. You know what I mean? But never go into a friendship with a girl with the end goal being sex. That's some creepy ass shit. Don't do that. And by the way, most women can smell that kind of tactic 3 rooms away. So not only is it not going to work, it's going to get you a rep as a nice guy, quote unquote. You know, one of them. A male feminist, quote unquote. An ally, you know. It's going to get you a rep as one of them. Don't be one of them. Be a guy. Be a guy that's interested in women. Simple, right? If you like a girl, flirt with her. If you want to be with her, yeah, give her the signs. And if she's not interested, carry on with your life. No problem, right? But then don't stick around as her friend to try and friendship your way in there. Don't do that. And for God's sake, don't approach the full subject as that either. You know what I mean? Anyway, well, that's the first relationship thing I've ever done in a while, right? That's like, what, a year? Like a year before I've said anything like that. Anyway, not only were those friendships one-sided, but that routine had kept me single all the way through high school into the first year of college. Yeah, because they knew what you were doing, dude. They knew what you were doing. You're trying to friendship your way into some pussy. And that's revolting to women. I'm telling you, there's nothing less sexy than a guy trying to friendship his way into getting laid. Ugh. I knew I really needed to start getting dating experience, so I course corrected. And wouldn't you know, a couple of years later, I met the love of my life, my wife. This would wrap up the Neil chapter of my hobby nightmares. If I think of anything else worth mentioning, I'll include it as a side note when I write to you again in the future. Thanks for reading, North, and may you keep brightening our hobby sphere with your presence for many years to come. Take a sip. Just kidding. Wrong hammer. Thank you, mate. What a wonderful hobby nightmare. Brilliant. And yeah, really enjoyed reading it. I will be back on a bit later on. I said this would be a shorter one, actually a longer one than usual. But I'll be back a bit later on with some live streams. Have a wonderful rest of your evening, and I'll speak to you very, very soon. All right? I'll see you in about 45 minutes. Well, actually, no. Probably in the next 10 minutes. All right, see you then. Have a good one. Bye now.